All right. Welcome, everybody. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday. It is March. I cannot believe it's March. It's time for another installment of MSP webinars. So I'm Steve Taylor. I'm the host. You can always go to mspwebinars.com and check out any of the past webinars that we've done over the months. Today we've got Danny Jenkins with ThreatLocker. And this, I'm intrigued by this tool, Danny, because it's basically whitelisting, which, I mean, at that point, it's not really antivirus or crypto prevent type stuff. I mean, you're literally just making it so the computer can only run the stuff you want it to run, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And we hope, and what we do is strive to make it easier. Because traditionally whitelisting is a headache and difficult, although effective. And what we've done is we've thought about a new way of looking at it, and we've made it so it's a much easier solution for businesses to use and much more reasonable.
Awesome. So, I've got some questions before we dive into a slideshow or anything. Let's see here. How long have you guys been in business with ThreatLocker?
So we're a startup. We've been around for, well, the company's technically started 2 years ago, after the team that founded ThreatLocker sold another company called SiriusTech to Sensinet. So we built the product 2 years ago, and we launched it just short of 12 months ago. So just short of a year since we've launched the original product.
All right. And would you say you have any competitors with what you guys do?
Yeah, so we built the product out of a need. So my background, although I've built cybersecurity products for a long time, I still consider myself to be an IT manager. And I had a need for a specific a school, actually, the school that my children go to. And there was a bunch of products out there, such as McAfee have their application control. There's obviously what's built into Windows with the SRS or AppLocker. And there's a few other products out there. But nothing was out there that was actually reasonable to use and easy to use. So for the majority of businesses that don't have big, huge IT departments to manage these application whitelists, we found that it just wasn't reasonable. We couldn't deploy something that was going to take us hours every day just to manage it. So, I mean, after a few months of searching, that's when me and the team decided to go off and develop our own product. And at the beginning, it seemed like it was going to be an easy challenge, but it turned out to be a lot more difficult. But in the end, we got to where we wanted to be, and we continue to make it better every single day. But it's, we got to where we wanted to be, and we ended up with what we consider a really, really easy to use whitelisting solution that is within the reach of small to medium sized enterprises and MSPs who don't have unlimited IT resources.
Why not, right? So one of our attendees, Zach, said his company has experimented with using Windows Advanced Firewall to whitelist applications to do it for low cost. Turns out it's really, really hard to do.
Well, that's true. And the firewall, although I'm not sure if they moved AppLocker into the firewall, is really focusing on trying to control network traffic as well, as opposed to just stopping what executes. And one of the, and that's where, like, so where we started, it's really, really difficult because the problem with whitelisting is it's not just the EXEs you have to whitelist. You have to whitelist all the libraries and everything that goes with it. And every time there's an update, that's a real headache for everybody. And that's the real issue. If you just whitelist the EXEs, it makes it a little bit easier, but then you're not really protecting from DLLs being switched out, which is the WannaCry was a DLL switch out virus. And there's a bunch of other crypto viruses that are actually just swapping DLLs out. And then, if you're allowing all the DLLs to execute, it's not very effective.
And Zach responded with, yeah, traffic blocked at the host was sort of a most of the way there type of solution.
Okay.
So let's see. That one's answered. So, I mean, I'm going to ask the tough question right now, Danny. I mean, I think you've already got some people interested. What's it cost?
So the retail price on this is $30 per user or per device per year. And MSPs get a third off that as a discount. It can also be billed monthly because most MSPs bill their clients monthly. We can wrap it up into a monthly single invoice that just goes out for all of your clients together. So you're talking, $20 a year divided by 12, so just short of $2 a month per device.
That's not bad. And with that, is there some type of antivirus that you guys would recommend, or that you even run yourselves internally alongside ThreatLocker?
Okay, so I try to stay away from this because in terms of it makes me, look reckless. But the way that whitelisting works is essentially the exact same way as an antivirus works. Only we're saying you explicitly allow rather than look for known threats. So with that in mind, the theory behind it, if you're running a whitelisting solution, there is no reason to run an antivirus. That said, I would never recommend someone not to use an antivirus, because the more protection you can get, the better. And it also protects against IT making mistakes. But most of our clients who run ThreatLocker actually stick with the built-in antivirus in Windows, rather than having to go out and pay for a Symantec or one of the higher price products, or stick to one of the cheap ones, because they understand that nothing can execute anyway. And nothing can execute. And we run it the same way an antivirus runs, in that we run it using a filter driver. So we're running at the kernel level. So literally, if it's not in the whitelist, it can't execute. The advantage of having the additional antivirus is to double check what the IT manager is doing. So if he's allowing something, or the MSP is doing that shouldn't be allowed, then it's giving that second level of protection. Most of our clients said use Windows Defender. Some of the more secure ones stick with whatever they're running, Kaspersky or that one's got a bit of backlash recently. It's quite popular though. Avast is very popular to run alongside it. But we don't have any specific recommendations. We don't interfere with any of them. We work with all of them.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So unless I'm bad at math, for an MSP, $1.67 essentially per user per month, because You're taking that 20 and you're breaking it up into the monthly amount. You don't care what antivirus they run it with, and theoretically they wouldn't need antivirus?
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, there's nothing wrong with having a second level of protection. So if someone does stop the ThreatLocker service, or turn it off, or put it into install mode, or do any of those things, then the antivirus gives that extra level of protection.
And that's interesting, just because everyone, that's the MSP thing. I mean, we got to sell antivirus to our clients, so it's hard to think of doing it any other way.
Yeah, so, and if you think back 10 years ago, which I know is a long time, it doesn't seem like a long time for me. In 15 years ago, nearly, in 2002, everybody used to have security software and antivirus to block viruses from entering their computers. And I remember the day that the Blaster virus came across, and I was working for a company. We had about 4,500 computers, and that Blaster virus spread through the company in 2 hours. And back then, you didn't have personal firewalls. You didn't go on the basis of, we're going to block known threats. We're only going to, personal firewalls weren't thought of. By the end of 2003, everybody had a personal firewall. Everyone was going on the basis of, we are blocking all ports unless they explicitly need to be opened. And that's essentially, now you still need an antivirus for that, because there's other ways of downloading software onto the computer. But, now now that same method of thinking that we thought about when we talked about open relays in the 90s and personal firewalls in the 2000s, and now the same method of thinking of saying we should start with a default deny policy, and then we're going to explicitly allow. Like I said, if you're running ThreatLocker, it's very, very, very hard to get a virus. The only way you're going to be able to get one is if you stop the service. So that's where the antivirus would come in effect. If someone actually stops it, administrator turns it off, administrator sets an allow policy, then the antivirus is going to give you that second level of protection. From an MSP point of view as well, adding this ability to manage what apps are allowed and what apps are denied, adds value add, because you're going to say to your customers, you can choose, we're going to take care of making the decision so your users don't accidentally make a mistake. I remember working with a client in Australia about 5 or 6 years, no, probably not that long ago, when ransomware was relatively new, 2012, maybe 2013. And the MSP had an antivirus on the computer, and the client had been infected with ransomware. They called me in to help recover from it, to try and get the data back that they couldn't get back. And this was in the early days of ransomware. If the MSP had been able to make the decision for them, so when the user tried to download what they thought was Google Maps, they were downloading something else. If the MSP had been able to say, this isn't Google Maps, we're not allowing you to run it, then that would have made life a lot easier and they wouldn't have got the ransomware. I can see you talking, but I can't hear you. Hello?
Help. I hit unmute. So what about advanced persistent threats that run entirely from memory?
Okay, so we also check the processes that are running, and we kill them if they're no longer in there. So if things change during the process, we continuously poll the services to see if anything is running in memory that is not matching the patterns that are in the whitelist. So again, they should be killed and shut down with, on a periodic basis if something manages to latch onto a process. In addition to that, things that latch onto processes is just to note, do it one of two ways. One is through running some software, which is the normal way. So in the first place, they wouldn't be able to run the software to latch onto a process. And even if that's the other way is through a vulnerability in the PC. And obviously the PC should be secured through firewalls and patching.
What about DDE exploits in Office?
So things like macros and things like that. So if the macro is able to, we don't stop the macro itself running, but we do stop it actually running any software as retrospectively. So if they manage to get as far as, and we see this a lot, especially back in the email world where I used to be, where you had embedded Office exploits and things like that, but it was, you would actually query, it would actually go off and try and run some software. And in that case, we would stop it doing any further damage than running the relatively low threat macro. And it couldn't get past that. It couldn't actually execute any real code.
So you're saying this will, in theory, prevent the DDE exploits? Correct.
It prevents them, and it's the same way, and not just DDE exploits, but vulnerabilities in Windows. Security is an evolving situation. So, I mean, this is why I always say the more security you can get, the better. But in the same with actually, when we first deployed this, we deployed it on a client in Orlando. They were running Windows 2003 servers, and they were in May last year. Just was one of our first deployments, and they deployed it on half their systems. And they were running these two, and they were hosting .NET 1 websites, which was a disaster to begin with. But they deployed them on these 2003 servers. And when WannaCry came through, servers that were running ThreatLocker, you could see the virus trying to launch in the audit. But even though it didn't protect the exploit in that they still were able to exploit the server, they were still able to use the IIS exploit because the servers hadn't been patched. But it did actually protect any further damage. So it did stop any execution of software. And they had literally deployed to half of their servers. They had clusters of servers, or load balancers, I think is the correct term. And they deployed to half of them. And literally, I think there was 12 servers in total, 6 of them which had ThreatLocker, all running the same version of Windows, all running the same host. The 6 that were running the version of ThreatLocker, obviously the exploit had happened. The attacker was able to get access to the software. They were able to push through malware. They just weren't able to execute that malware. The other 6 servers, they logged into one morning and found a message on the screen saying, your computer's been hacked. Please pay this much money to get your data back.
So I'd actually like, if he will, I'm going to give Zach Johnson the ability to talk. He is, I don't know if I would call him a security expert, but he knows a heck of a lot. And I know he's got probably a bunch of questions. So I'm just going to let him kind of fire them off and let you two battle it out death.
So, it sounds like that you almost have sort of a post-execution layer instead of a pre-execution layer, like typical, like next-gen AV. Is that sound about right?
So there's two levels. One is we have a pre-execution layer, and a post-execution layer. So the pre-execution stops anything executing at the beginning, and then the post-execution goes through and checks what is actually running and validates that it is what it's supposed to be, and it's not changing. It hasn't changed in any way. So it happens at both levels.
And does that happen at like a kernel level, similar to like Sophos or Cylance or Sentinel-1?
Yes, correct. It happens at kernel level.
Okay, so this almost reads like one of the subsets of the functions of a next-gen AV. You're just doing the pre and post execution like whitelist at a kernel level, just like next-gen AV, but without the heuristics, without any of the other like advanced detection capabilities.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're doing it at the basis, and where I'll show you more about where the value comes in of using us is we're not basing it on, we're going to try and detect the bad guys, if you like. We're going to try and see if this is a bad guy based on its criminal record, or we're going to try and see if this is a bad guy based on the fact that it looks like a heroin addict. We're not trying to do something based on characteristics, because it's not effective. Well, it is. It's not that it's not effective. It's just clearly not effective, because everybody's running these next gen AVs and people are still being attacked by malware and ransomware, and there's always a new type of virus. We're doing it on the opposite, where we're saying
and
we're
like
and trusted.
To be clear, application whitelisting is considered a critical layer, right, on top of advanced persistent threat protection and the heuristics, the machine learning, HIPs, all of that fun stuff. I mean, it's considered a viable layer, and it all comes down to your risk management and your risk and threat matrix on like whether that's good enough. I mean, this sounds like it gets a solid like 95% of the way there, bundled with a good signature-based AV like WebRoot or Bitdefender. This would definitely add a very sophisticated level to just about anybody's security stack.
That's correct.
That's awesome. It's very
right.
awesome.
And like ideologically, I disagree with your choice to run this alone. Although I do commend your dedication to eating your own dog food.
I'm a security guy, and that's why I always say if someone asks me from a security point of view, what should I do? If I'm consulting, and I've done a lot of consulting over time, I tell them that they should have two different backup software. They should have two different things. They should multi-layer everything. I'm just trying to get to the point of how the fundamentals of how it works. And
right.
Of course, there's also the risk that people just turn it off. I mean, IT people make mistakes, hopefully not as much as non-IT people, but IT people make mistakes too. And if somebody turns it off, or someone goes in automatic mode and doesn't think, oh, this is actually not Google, I didn't check it, I didn't check the signatures, I didn't, the people make mistakes. So even outside of the technology, it's fundamentally it's how it fundamentally works is different to what you should be doing.
Right. Oh yeah,
for doing is a lot more.
And so like one thing that would really, really interest me is event correlation. We're big into SIM and having a SOC, eyeballs looking at all the visibility we have. So having this generate events that we could correlate in our SIM would be incredibly powerful. Like being able to see who tried to execute what and when is a valuable thing. And we can achieve some of that by hooking our SIM into our EPP, but this could be just more data, more visibility. Is that a possibility?
Okay, so what I'd like to do, we don't integrate currently into any SIMs, not for the lack of trying to get deals with Kaseya and LabTech, but what we do have is we do have an API. We do have an interface which logs that data that you can access. And I didn't say this before the demonstration. Everyone who's attending or viewing these demonstrations can also get a free copy of our audit software. So even if you don't wish to use the control of the whitelist, our audit version, you're welcome to deploy it to all of your clients just so you can have visibility of what they're doing and what's being executed and what isn't being executed.
Awesome. Zach, you good for now?
Yeah, for now.
For now. All right. I'll give that back to you later if you need it, Zach. So I liked the questions, and Zach made a solid point. I'm not trying to promote the two products that Zach mentioned. I'm simply, recapping what he said. If you want to use a solid AV tool that is, I believe he said that both are definitions based, use like a WebRoot or a Bitdefender stacked with ThreatLocker, and now you've got a pretty solid stack. If I'm recapping Zach correctly, feel free to put in the chat if I'm wrong, and I'll correct myself later in the webinar. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other tools out there. Okay, that's those are just the two that came to the top of his mind. WebRoot, Bitdefender. Not paying me to say anything right now. This is not a plug. Just letting you guys know. All right, one more question, and then I want you to go through your slides in your demo, and then meanwhile keep the questions coming into the Q&A section, guys. So Errol asked, if we're already paying for Device Guard and AppLocker with our Office 365 subscription, and it seems to provide the same functionality as ThreatLocker, why would we need ThreatLocker? It seems like it would be an additional expense and yet another dashboard to monitor, whereas we could just stick to Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. If they are not the same, what is the difference?
Okay, so I almost think the AppLocker is my second favorite whitelisting solution, ThreatLocker being the first. And I've deployed it several times. There's a couple of smaller things. AppLocker doesn't protect against hash being changed for non-signed files. It doesn't protect against, it does protect against DLLs. It doesn't protect against MSIs or batch files or configuration files. So if you run a VB script or something that isn't protected in AppLocker, whereas we do, that's from a security point of view. But outside of a security point of view, what AppLocker doesn't do is create application sets for you. It's extremely difficult. If you want to create an application set for, say, Adobe Reader, and then Adobe releases an update next week, AppLocker doesn't do that for you. You need to take care of the update. So before you release that update to Adobe Reader, you need to make sure it's in AppLocker. You need to make sure that the new files have been deployed to AppLocker, which is fine for bigger managed organizations that never update software automatically, but smaller organizations that have Adobe on automatic update and have Google Chrome on automatic update and have all the other common applications that 99% of the population use on automatic update. AppLocker doesn't take care of that. So you have to go in as the administrator and you have to continue to amend that. Now, again, if you're a massive company, if you're Bank of America, that's fine. I spoke to a law firm that had 1,000 employees, which isn't a massive company, but they had a team of 3 people managing their whitelists. They could afford it. I mean, they had 100 lawyers working for them that were being, billing out a few $1,000s every morning. So they were happy to pay for 3 IT guys just to manage the whitelist. But if you're in the part of the world where most of us sit, where you don't have enough hours in the day, managing AppLocker is an extremely big headache. Unless you take it on the approach where I'm just allowing these folders and let it happen. The other problem with AppLocker is when somebody does want an application, say someone in the payroll department's having a problem with their QuickBooks or that day, and they call up QuickBooks and they want to connect to their machine using TeamViewer or whatever remote support software they're using, and they need to get access to TeamViewer. TeamViewer is being blocked, rightly so, because you don't want remote access, but you need to allow an exception. If you want to do that through AppLocker, you're talking at least an hour, and that's assuming you can get on, you can add the files. With us, it can be done in a few seconds, which I'll demonstrate to you in a while.
Very cool. Well, Danny, we'll stop bombarding you with questions, and we'll let you go through your spiel, and we'll probably have plenty more questions by the time you're done, man.
Okay, I'm going to fly through these first slides because I know slides are boring and I think we've covered a lot of it, but I'm going to very quickly fly through them. I think we all know, we've all established there's a big problem with businesses being able to control what's running, which ultimately leads to malware vulnerabilities because software that isn't patched, data breaches, and unlicensed software. And one thing I'll add into there very quickly, and this was someone that used this product, and they installed it, the audit version, the free version, and they managed to save themselves 90 times $900 a month because they believed they had 120 users that were using Microsoft Office 365. But when it actually came down to it, they found that only 28 of their 120 users were actually ever opening Office. So, there's a little bit of a positive side. If, businesses very easily assume that everybody needs this software, but when they actually go back and look at who's running it, they may find they can actually save money elsewhere. So there's a big problem with not knowing what's running, which ultimately leads to downtime, loss of revenue, fines and lawsuits. So what we did, which I think has kind of already been established, is we came up with a solution that makes whitelisting easier. And we've done that through really, really easy installation. It's a one-click install. It can be pushed out through group policy. If you have a GPO, you can just put it in and it'll push it out. Or if you have your own management software, you just put the MSI in, it pushes out. If you've got 5 computers and you don't have group policy, you can just single click on it. It installs in 10, 15 seconds. So it's really, really easy. You don't have to configure anything from the client side. It gets put into the group automatically. We update our application databases automatically. Now, I'm not promising we have every application, but when somebody signs up for our service, what happens is at first it goes into monitor mode, and we take a baseline quietly of your computer over the first day of what files are on there. And we try and match that to applications using various technologies, lots of automatic scanning, lots of comparison of signatures, hashes, of everything else we have in databases. Within a day, you're going to start to see what's called suggested policies appear. And then if there's applications that aren't, can't find them, we have a SOC here, and their job is to hunt applications. So if they can find, if there's an application that we don't have in our database and we can't get it from any of the automatic installations we've done and all the automatic updates, we go off and we hunt them. Now, we don't always find them. There's some software that you can't publicly get available. So we can't find it. So we can't validate that it is correct. But if we can validate it's correct, we validate it. If it's not, then it goes over to you guys to create your own application sets, which is really easy as well. So I think that's our biggest differentiator between other products. And the third thing is we made approval really, really easy. It's one-click approval, one-click request, one-click approval, and it takes less than 30 seconds. How we do that is kind of what I just described. We have a bunch of technology that looks at files, it identifies files. So you see here, Microsoft Word's coming in, it compares the hashes, the digital signatures, and the file names and a combination of things to determine what application does it belong to. And then we associate that file with an application. So you're not whitelisting a file, you're whitelisting an application. So I'm not going to quote industry experts of what you should be doing about whitelisting, but everyone's kind of agreeing at this point that whitelisting is an important part of the stack, despite only 5%, 4%, depending on who you speak to, of the businesses using it. It's, Gartner, NIST are all recommending and requiring whitelisting in some cases. NIST does for government, people who deal with government contracts are all saying it's important strategies. From your guys' point of view, there are other driving factors if you do have clients. HIPAA compliance, it helps massively with HIPAA compliance and data loss because malware is one of the biggest causes of data loss. And NIST compliance, if you do business with the government, but they also recommend it. And GDPR, which I don't think it affects anyone here. But the biggest thing that, is driving businesses to deploy whitelisting right now is not, the government regulation, but the fact that they are getting hit seriously hard. 10 years ago, if you got a virus in your network, it was a pain in the backside. As an MSP or an IT manager, you had to work a few extra hours that day. Now, businesses are actually being shut down, partly because viruses are far more aggressive than they used to be. They're taking down systems. They're not just showing pop-ups with penis enlargement ads anymore. They're actually crippling systems until you pay a ransom. But also because systems are far more important than they used to be. So roll on the real cost now of viruses is not the cost to fix it, but the loss of productivity and the loss of revenue to the business, which means we need a better solution than what we have. And I think that's obviously my last slide. So I'm gonna do a quick overview. I don't want to keep everyone here forever of our system. Let me find. Okay, and I'm going to start with the audit because that's very simple. And like I said, you guys are welcome to deploy it to all of your client computers free of charge. And at the very least, you have an audit of what's going on. What the audit does is it keeps a record of every single application that's being launched by every single user, whether it be a DLL file, an executable, an MSI. If it's opened by a user, it gets recorded if it's executed, not if they copy and paste it. Now, it logs the computer it was on, the user that did it, the application name. So you see here, we've matched this file saying it actually belongs to Google Chrome. So if it's a known file, it has the application name in there, the process that opened it, the date and time. And if you have a problem and you need to backtrack, where did this file come from? Who opened it first? Even if you don't have the whitelisting, you can search this audit and you can search it across, the whole company and say, who opened this file first, so we can locate the source of this virus. If it was a user, we need to know who's doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and if it was denied or allowed. So, and whatever the file may be, you can search it, and it'll come up and give you a full list of the files that are running. That is completely free. We also have a bunch of reports here. You can request additional reports that get shown to your clients as an MSP if you want, and we can put them in here. So you can see what your top applications are, your top files, and various other things. And like I said, if you have reports, as long as the data is available as an MSP, we can create those reports for you. Who's blocking files, and things like that. So that part is completely free. As an MSP, you can manage all your organizations here. You don't have to call us and say, I need a new organization. You can simply add a new organization here, and then you can manage them on their back. Click here to manage them on their behalf. So you don't have to worry about saying, I need to put in a new request for a new organization. You can do that yourself. You can't delete organizations yourself. You have to submit tickets if you want that done. And that's simply because somebody made a mistake. And
Can I ask a silly question?
Go ahead.
When you hit the new button to add a new organization, why does it matter what time zone they're in?
Because the audit displays the time zone based on where they are.
Oh.
We have clients from Hong Kong to the UK to California. So the audit here, the time that's logged is based on the client's time zone.
Okay.
So
that makes, and that's coming from the guy who's in Ohio and all of his clients are in the same time zone, so.
Yeah, so it matters because the clients are everywhere. And everything is ultimately stored in the database in UTC. So it just gets converted for friendliness to the front end. So we know what they're in. Okay, getting onto the control element, which is really the important part. I'm going to show you how it works, how easy it is. So this has been set up, this computer here, and you can see here we have a bunch of policies. So we permitted join me, we've permitted admin tools, Cortana, Google Chrome, and then we have a default deny. So you don't need to permit operating system files. What happens is based on the version of the build and the version of your computer, we match it and you can't block them. So like you can permit Internet Explorer isn't permitted, for instance, but any system DLLs, any system executables, it's not possible for you to block them. So you're not going to accidentally shoot yourself in the foot and not be able to build Windows. So a list of policies here, very much like firewall policies. And then we have a default deny policy. When you set up, we always put this in monitor mode, so this will always permit to begin with. All right, so I'll just give you an example here. So I haven't permitted putty. It's blocked here. It's going to pop up here saying putty was blocked. Click for more information and to request permission. So here I can see that I want to request. So if you're on your client site or if you're connected to your client's computer and you want to permit this yourself, you can just say my administrator is present. And it will pop up. It'll ask you for your login, which it's already logged in here because I just logged in the other browser. And then you can click on this and you can say, I want to permit this application. So you can say, I want to create a policy and it'll pre-populate it for you. I want to, for this whole computer groups, you can say, I'm not going to say this, going to show you the one-click approval. So I'm going to say permit Google Chrome. You can say, I want it to, also permit putty it was. I want it to expire at this date. So if you want to give temporary access to someone, so say TeamViewer, because somebody needs remote support, you can give temporary access here. You can say permit execution, deny execution, or deny but allow the user to request. So that's pretty self-explanatory. If they only deny, they don't get the option to request. And this will obviously apply to the whole group of computers. You can enter, this is just string values. You can enter any matching usernames in here if you want to. So it's just matching against the username that's logged in. But if you don't want to go through the hassle of creating a policy, which isn't that much of a hassle, you can just click approve here. That means it's going to approve for that one computer. And it takes about 30 seconds. And what it does, it puts it in here. If you ever want to remove it, explicitly for the computer, you can see that this computer is allowed putty in that list there. So each computer has their own allow and deny list if you don't want to use policies as well. So if you want, and then if I try and open putty again, it's now opening. So it really is very easy to launch and to set up and to request and deny permission. These policies can get as complicated or as simple as you want them. You're going to have, after you deploy this on a machine, you put the group in monitor mode. So when you create a group, so say here, a laptop. So when you install it, if you check this box, monitor mode, it's not going to block anything. What it's going to do is it's going to create a bunch of suggested policies for you over the next few days. So it's going to look at everything that's running, everything that's already there, and it's going to suggest policies for you. And then what it's going to do is come up with a bunch of, if there's any unverified applications, it's going to create unverified applications, which means these are the applications that we've created based on, this folder in the program files folder, and this is what this is opening, but we can't verify them, which means you might have to go off and verify it yourself. So say you have a custom line of business application that we can't verify is valid, is what it says it is. We'll create the application and we'll create an unverified policy. And that's based on what you've got on your computer. So then you can decide, do I want that application or not? So after a few days, you should be able to go in here. You're going to see a bunch of policies like this. They're going to say suggested in front of them. And then you can say, okay, now we want to come out of monitor mode. What do I want to do to these policies? I don't want to permit Cortana, or, oh, wow, people are running Xbox. I don't want to permit Xbox, so I'm going to delete it from here. And then you can put it into the default deny status where everything else is denied. Some people take a more conservative approach, and at the beginning, they create very basic policies like allow the program files folder and allow the Windows folder. I'm not a big fan of that, but it's, at the beginning, some people do that because they don't want to go through the hassle. Everything that's on your computers, we're going to put into suggested policies for you anyway. If there's something there that we don't recognize, like I said, we'll create unverified applications, and then it's up to you to say, these are now verified. I know this is ProCare, or I know this is this program that's in this folder because I installed it. And then you can just put it live yourself. So it's very, very easy. Like I said, policies, they're very easy to create. You just pick the computer group you want. You pick whether it has an expiry date. There's a new field here. It's live in Europe, but it's not live in the US yet because Europe seems to go live, even though we're a US company, despite my accent. We always put Europe live first. And it says email address here. So what this field does is it allows you to say which email addresses will get notified when somebody requests permission. So right now it just goes into the approval center. But it's very imminent, the next version, because it's already live in Europe. So it's like a week away at most. So that's a really useful feature as well in the new policies. But they're very easy. You can reorder them. They're like firewall policies. Just drag them up and down if you want to permit them different orders. If you put the default deny at the top, obviously everything's going to get denied. Apart from core Windows files. So that's pretty easy. You can create your own applications. There's two ways to do that. There's this way, which isn't very often done. You can go into here, you add an application, so we can say test, and you can put a file name in here, a folder, or a hash, and this will show certificates that are valid as well. The way that everybody really does it is like this. If they write the ThreatLocker tray down here, if you right click on it, you have two options here. One is create application. This option allows you to add multiple folders or MSIs. I'll put a disclaimer in the MSI. Not all MSIs work. It depends on how they're embedded and put together. So you can go through here and you can say, I want to add my, say, this PC program files, let's say Windows Mail, which obviously you don't need to add, but you can add multiple folders in here and you can add MSIs as well. You can then choose how you'd like to create the application. So, and you have a few options here. You can say I want the full path, which means every file name, the full file name path must match. So if the file is in C Windows / notepad.exe, it has to match the full path. The other way is to say file name only. Now, typically the way I recommend people do it is if they're using hash or cert, they use the file name only because we're validating the hashes there anyway, so it doesn't matter. You can also say none, just hash if you want. That means if they rename the file, it's going to work as long as the hash matches. So the way I normally do it is say file name only and then cert preferred or hash, which means if the certificate matches, if the file is signed, use the certificate of the file. If it's not signed, use the hash of the file. You could say I want to use the hash and the certificate and the full path if you wanted to. So all of those must match. Now, obviously, if you do that, you want to make sure that the file isn't going to be moved or the path isn't going to change. So a lot of applications install in user profile folders. In that case, that's not going to work because the path is going to be different. So you'd have to say, well, I want it to be file name only. So you can do a combination. Typically, like I said, I would do file name only and cert preferred. You give it an application name, so I'll just say test 1, 2, 3, 4. I need to, and don't think I put the right password in there. Find out now. Apparently not.
So right now, by entering the username and password, you're entering the admin password for ThreatLocker.
Yes.
So you can authorize the creation of that.
Yes. So this is going to create it here. So that's a success. And you'll see here, let's just say test. They probably have like 5 of them. You can see all of the files that were in that folder that I picked. And, if they were signed, it will have the matching certificate. If they're not signed, it will have a hash. Now, the other way of doing it, which I think is a really cool way. If it's a really simple application, you can create it like that. If they install in one folder or install in a handful of folders and you know where the files are, that's a really easy way of creating it. The other way is what we call install mode. So install mode has 2 purposes. One is it unblocks everything on the computer. And this is where your antivirus is very important. So any files that are blocked, everything is going to be allowed. So if you want to install Visual Studio, for instance, and you want to unblock everything, you can just put it into install mode. Again, you need your your ThreatLocker password here. Right. When you hit start here, it says it takes 60 seconds. It doesn't, but we say 60 so you don't log a ticket. It takes probably about 15, but unless I'm doing a demo, then it takes 70. So what's going to happen now is it's going to unblock everything. So everything should be unblocked. The other thing it's going to do is log every file that's created. So if I copy this here, you'll see here, it's logged the file that's created. So if you're installing an application that you don't know where it puts files, so maybe it installs some files in the Windows directory and some files in the program files directory. And assuming we don't have the application in our database, so it's something like a line of business application or a non-publicly available application. If you run this in install mode, it makes it really, really easy for you to determine what files are being created. And like it just keeps creating these. And then when this is done, it's the same process as before. We can say the same thing, full path. I'll say full path and hash here just so you can see. It's going to obviously in those two files, create application and success. There's the application. So you can see those files were created in there. Now, if I had just said hash in there, it would have only created one file because two of those files have the same hash. So it wouldn't have created two files in the list. It would have just said, had this hash in here. So anything that matches this hash. Okay, the computer groups.
So just real quick, if I said allow Photoshop based on the cert, it's going to see that it's signed by Adobe Systems or whatever it's called. And then anything that has that certificate is going to be allowed. So,
okay, so Photoshop is actually slightly, Adobe is probably the worst example because Adobe is very, very good in that they sign every application with its own cert. So, which I wish everybody did. But
gotcha.
I get what, yeah. So if you said allow Microsoft or Google, because they don't, it would allow every application by them. But if you said allow by cert and file name, it would have to match the file name.
Understood. Okay, I like that. So especially, you know, for the people that just want to allow everything by Microsoft, because who doesn't want Windows Movie Maker running on their work computers, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. And, you know, we exclude those. So the system files, most stuff's included in the system files that pre-install the Windows Movie Maker, Internet Explorer, they're all excluded. The admin tools are excluded. So, you know, unless they're critical for starting Windows. So they're excluded from our base install. So they have to be explicitly allowed. But yeah, so now if you were to say file name and signed by Microsoft and someone was to get smart, they could potentially rename the file, but it's a long, you know, it's a long shot that they'd rename the file as notepad.exe so they could run Movie Maker if it was signed by Microsoft. It'd have to match the certificate too. Microsoft have 48 different certificates at the moment on a standard installer Windows. So it'd have to match this, you know, the certificate that's in there too. But that's really useful. But Adobe is the nicest vendor because they sign everything, every product with its own cert, which I really.
That's really cool. So is it okay to ask? I got a bunch of questions here from people.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Ed asked a question at the beginning. I'm just going to recap the question just in case there was something we missed in your little demo. Is there an MSP portal? Yes. To be able to see and configure all endpoints along all clients? Yes. Also, is there a master level of configuration so that whitelisting something at the root level would affect everyone? I think the answer to that one is also yes.
Yes, at a customer level, but not an MSP level. But that's something we could. It's actually a good feature. We do it at a master level already, so the code is there, but it's not at the moment. There's no way if you create a policy at the MSP level, it doesn't flow down to your client level. But that would be a good feature. So
that would be a good feature.
Yeah, it will be really easy to do because we already do it at the master level. We just don't do it at the. So we just literally have to say get the MSP ones too. So
you know, Danny, I'm glad you said it would be really easy to do. So you'll have that ready like tomorrow by the end of the day, then, right?
I'll have that ready on our beta servers tomorrow by the end of the day. It will take me 3 minutes to do it and a week to test it.
You know, that's actually a very reasonable statement. Okay, so is this white label, co-branded, or ThreatLocker branded from our client's point of view?
Right now, it's only ThreatLocker branded. We are not going to introduce white labeling, but we may introduce co-branding.
Okay. How do you provide support to the MSPs? Some of us need more help than others.
So we have a support desk. Typically, we like people to email, but I always say to somebody as well, you know, I'm not naive. We are a relatively new business. If you have a problem and you're not getting an answer from the support desk, call my cell phone, whatever time you want as well. And if that means waking me up in the middle of the night, wake me up in the middle of the night if you're not getting a response from the support desk. Typically, we have email. We also have a phone line where you can call, and everybody's different. Everybody has different requirements. Everybody has different questions, and we understand that. And we typically reach out once you've been on trial for a few days, and we'll reach out to see if you've got any questions or need any help. But we're here. We're available 24 hours a day, for support.
So let's say I wanted to get signed up today as an MSP. Is there anything I need to do on your website to get the special MSP pricing?
Okay, just put a note in your contact form that you're on this webinar, if that's even possible. I'm going to check that. If not, just I'll expect. Just let Steve know, I guess.
No problem.
I'm sure there's a note field on here. I'm not even sure. There's a message field. So just put a note in here saying that you're on the MSP webinar, and we will get that pricing sorted.
Perfect. Is there a minimum buy-in? Can we get one?
No, there's no minimum buy-in. The only thing to consider is from a licensing perspective, companies that use remote desktop services, they have to have at least one license on the device that connects or for the user. So if a company has one remote desktop server with 200 users, they need 200 licenses. That's the only quirk on the licensing. Other than that, it's per device. Now, if they can,
and if I've got a client with one device and I decide I want to get started tomorrow and just sign up one device,
go ahead.
I'll give you my $1.67 a month or $20 for the one device, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, that's fine. Perfect.
All right, so
actually, just on that, as an MSP, we're going to give you one bill. So if you're being billed monthly, which most MSPs are, we're going to give you one bill across your entire customer list every month. So we're going to say this many devices for this customer, this many devices for this customer, and we're going to send you one bill.
I think most MSPs would expect that, Danny. I think you're okay there.
Okay.
Because we typically for our antivirus and RMMs and that type of stuff, when we get a new client, we tell them, hey, we need 50 more licenses, just pop it on the next bill or whatever. Yeah. That's what they do. So, can I assign a computer to an organization and or a computer group when deploying it using a command line for the MSI?
So I normally go through this. With the MSI, when you download the MSI here, you choose the group here. You click on the group and you click download.
Oh, okay.
There you go. And that's specific to that group. There's no magic science in that. There's a code embedded in the installer. And literally, if the MSI name is that, it will use that. That's the auth code for the group. And then what happens is as soon as it runs, it creates a computer account under that group.
Not at all related to ThreatLocker, and I swear this still is not a plug. It just came to mind. WebRoot's the same way. You can download the one WebRoot exe file to install it, and then you can change the exe name to the license key. And when you install it, it automatically installs using that license key, and it puts it in that client's folder or whatever. So I like that. That's really cool. So we could probably, in theory, download just one version of ThreatLocker and just keep renaming the file.
Yes, as long as you need to know the group key though. So
there's probably no easy way to get that, but
there's no easy way to get that. The easiest way is to download the file. The file's only a megabyte in size, so it's not huge.
That's just nerdy Steve thinking out loud. That's all.
So the easiest way to get it is to download the file. So
perfect. Zach said, "I bet I could query the group ID via API." See, he takes nerdiness to a whole new level.
Yeah, that's probably too much hardware. And I don't know why we removed it, because it was in here, and it's quite possibly just hidden. It was in here. You could click on it and see the group key. But I don't know why it's not there. I don't even remember when it was removed. Because we do the same with the computer keys too, because each computer has a key, and the computer ID and the key are stored in the registry. And we show them there. So I don't know why the group key is not being shown.
That's really funny. Can multiple policies be assigned to the same computer?
Multiple policies can be assigned to the same computer, yeah. And they all run in order.
So what if you have a policy that says deny Photoshop and another policy that says allow Photoshop?
They run in order. So computer policies allow run first, deny first. So here, if you add directly to the computer, the denies run first, the permits run second, and then company policies or computer group policies run, and they run in order. And you can drag these around as easy, whatever way you want. As soon as it hits the policy, it's going to stop running.
So, and here's Kaseya Steve talking. Ed, to answer your question real quick, correct. Computer Steve is Kaseya Steve is talking. So I know with Kaseya, it's very much like Active Directory. So the closer you are to the object, or in this case, the computer, that is the one that would win.
Correct.
So if I put a deny at the computer group, but an allow on the computer itself,
computer wins.
Computer wins.
Correct.
And if I put an allow at the group and a deny at the computer,
computer wins.
And if I'm an idiot and put both at the computer,
the deny wins. And 99.9%. I'm trying to think, I wrote the code, but I'm 99.9% deny wins. We run deny policies first, and then so at the group level, they run in order. So whatever order they're on the screen like this, they run in order. But at the computer level,
and when you say they run in order, do you mean the default deny is what starts it?
No, it's always at the bottom. So here, this is the bottom. It's just like a firewall. You have the last policy on your firewall would be deny, and then everything else would be. So they run. If I drag this up to the top, I won't be able to open Google Chrome. So if I, so you permit, typically your permits go at the front, but companies have some weird policies as well. I've seen, allow everything from Microsoft, but deny the downloads folder at the top of the list, and I've seen some pretty inventive policy creation. Companies have some strange ways of setting things up, but typically the way I would set it up is deny at the bottom and then permit. But if you put this deny at the top, it's going to deny first. The computers don't have that luxury. They don't run in order. They are just simply allow and deny lists, and denies run first. If I'm wrong, I will send a correction. Nobody uses deny here. The deny in the computer is never used.
That doesn't make sense when you just have a default deny across the whole organization.
Yeah, well, typically that's the thing. People have a default deny and then they have allow apps. The only reason I could possibly imagine you'd need a deny is if you find out one employee is playing solitaire too much, and you want to block it on that computer. But it's
those darn employees, man.
Yeah. I've never seen anyone use the deny policy there. So typically people have the default deny in the organization, and then they just, they have allows at the computer level. So if you have one computer that's allowed to run this software, they can do that, but they never have denies at the computer level.
So that's very cool, man. Does anyone else have any other questions for Danny before I really start to beat him up? You thought it was hard before, Danny. I'm just making it up as I go, to be completely honest. Okay, so I don't see. I mean, obviously, people have to type their questions, so it may take a moment. But all right, so the retail price is $30. So if Coca-Cola called you up and said, we need to get 100 of these, it's $30
Yes.
per year.
Yes.
As an MSP, any MSP, we can call you up and get it for 20.
Correct.
You have any special deals for MSP webinars subscribers?
So we have the free audit.
Okay.
So, and you can use that on all your clients as long as you want. So that's the deal we got at the moment. And if anyone's got any specific customers they want to talk about, they've got in mind, feel free to send on the details and we can try and work out some extra deals.
And do you have tiered pricing? Like if I came to you and said, hey, I've got 10,000 systems, I don't want to pay $20 a system.
As an MSP, it's funny because the enterprise typically no, because they tend to get harder work when they get, as MSPs, we can work on tiered pricing if you start having lots of computers. If you have 10,000 computers, we'll work out a deal. If it's 10,000 computers, I'll work out a very good deal.
I know a guy is why I'm asking.
Okay, yeah. So we'll work out.
I'll pass this on to him, and who knows, maybe you two will make a deal. How hard would it be to pipe this into a scene with Kafka?
Into a scene with what?
Kafka. Zach, I'm going to unmute you.
So Kafka is like a data streaming platform to connect disparate systems and the events, logs, just raw data, and that I can use that as a data source to feed into my SIM. Like how difficult would that be? Can I just use Kafka to constantly pull the API and build a data set and feed that into my SIM? Or do you have rate limiting on API polls? How hard would that be?
I don't think it'll be. Can it pull in a JSON? Yes.
Yes.
I'm more concerned about the do we need a get me new items API as opposed to just get me the audit API? Because if I get the audit API, it's going to return a crap load of data every time.
Right, and I'm not opposed to a crap ton of data because I can pull it into Kafka and then select what I want and feed that to something else. So a ton of data isn't a problem.
Yeah, but eventually it will just not download because there's too much of it. But we don't have any rate limiting on our API. But what we do have is we have alerts if we see something attacking our system. We use why am I forgetting the name? A product that it's actually a very good product that gives us any kind of unusual traffic on our server. So it's potentially get shut down by our software.
Why I asked. If I query 14,000 times a second, you're probably going to know about it and you're not going to appreciate it. So we would have to sit and discuss a reasonable rate of ingestion.
Yeah, and I think what we would do is if you're going to pull it down, where you're just going to get the new data, I would make a change to the API, possibly put a get update API that only returns new rows.
Yes, that would be good.
Rather than you pulling down, if you want to pull it down every 5 minutes, rather than you pulling down the whole days every 5 minutes, just pull down 5 minutes worth every 5 minutes.
Right. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be perfect.
Yeah, I wouldn't go and pull crap loads of data without
making reasonable accommodations. Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's gonna you may get shut down. Because if what happens is that we have this web product, it's actually a very good product, and I'm not trying to market because I can't remember the name. And it literally monitors any unusual traffic on our servers. So if we see excessive amounts of data coming down, we're able to monitor it and we're able to take remediative action to it. So it could trigger something with our support guy saying, "Oh, there's something going on here. Someone's attacking us," and then kill the
right. A fast data stream looks an awful lot like a DDoS sometimes.
Yeah. So I wouldn't do it without getting it. And very few people query APIs. So typically, that's when people want to query them. We work with them to figure out what they're doing anyway. We don't just people ask, but we don't publish the API keys either. So you'd have to ask for the keys.
Right.
To actually query the API. So normally if you want to query the API, you let us know. We say, well, what do you want? We tell you the best ways to get the data. And then that gets done a bit more personal than here's the login and figure it out. So,
but yeah, that's beautiful. That sort of opens up SIEM integration that we want to build ourselves. So that's cool.
Yeah. And, like I said, I mean, we're a new company and we want to work with people. So if there's things we don't have, that we're not objective to, we're not just adding loads of stuff into the product. If there's valuable things that people think of are useful to add into the product, and they don't change fundamental ways the product works, then we're happy to put things in. Like I said, most things, small changes could take 3 minutes, but they take a week to go through testing. So
yeah, that would be perfect. And we may have a discussion later, you and I.
Okay, thank you. That's Zach, is it?
Yes.
This is awesome. All right. I see there's a Q&A in here. Great stuff, guys. I got to go. Need to see a competitor's webinar now. Just kidding. Thanks. I guess that wasn't really a question. Thanks, Roger. If Roger watches this to see the ending later on, it's not as exciting as he was expecting because I think we're wrapping up. But Danny, this was awesome. Thank you so much. If people want to reach you, can they do Danny at ThreatLocker.com?
They can email me at Danny@ThreatLocker.com, and I look forward to talking to everyone. And I'd appreciate anyone who wants to sign up for a trial to just send me an email or fill the form in on the website, and I'll get it up and running pretty quickly by the end of the day.
Awesome. And so Danny, thanks so much for coming on here and doing this. I really appreciate it. For those of you that are interested, go to ThreatLocker.com, download Control. You can do the audits for free, and it's a pretty neat looking tool. I think I'm going to give this a try myself for my own MSP. I am going to get you an introduction to someone that may be willing to make a deal for 10,000 agents. We'll see.
I appreciate that, Steve.
And then, so for those of you that are interested in what we got coming up, Thursday, the 15th of March, we've got Bigger Brains coming. They're going to teach us about their e-learning solution that basically you can either add as a value add or resell to your clients. March 22nd, we've got Cloudberry. March 29th, we've got Chocolatey. Next week, we have our next MSP Roundtable. So if anybody is interested in learning more about the upcoming webinars or just wants to get registered, you can go to mspwebinars.com, and everything's right up there. I can't think of anything else. This will be on YouTube later for those of you that missed some of this. And yeah, I really appreciate you all.
Okay, well, so thank you for having me, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity to pitch to your MSPs.
Yeah. Absolutely. Zach, yes, we'll talk about getting you on the roundtables. Shoot me over an email, Zach, steve@mspwebinars.com, and we'll get going on that. All right, guys, we're going to sign off of YouTube here, and y'all have a great day, great weekend, and I'll see you at the next one.